Okay, it's almost 6:35. Should I go ahead and read the?
Yes, definitely.
Great. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time joining us for one of our virtual committee meetings, you'll notice that right now you're muted and you're going to remain muted throughout the duration of the meeting. Only the co-chairs, so Andrea and Sarah, and any presenters will be unmuted at any given time. Following the presentation, the co-chairs will call on members of the public who wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon on your screen and pressing the raise hand button. It's not the wave or the thumbs up. Only press the raise hand button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute whenever you're called upon. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the two co-chairs calls on you. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support only. Just to help with Zoom software problems, it's not to ask questions of the presenters or the co-chairs. They will never see those chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section where you might find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen. We might miss you and not be able to see you. So if you're having problems, chat me. I'm here for support. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sandrea and Sarah, and they can get the meeting started.
Great. Thank you, Will. Good evening, everyone. Before we start our meeting, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my co-chair, Sandrea I. Coleman, for receiving her certificate in community leadership from the CUNY School of Labor and Urban Studies. This is after she completed her master's in divinity. She went on to get this amazing intensive certificate. I know that she has spent many a night working, staying up on this while she's engaged in the millions of other activities she's doing in the community. And so I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity at the start of this meeting to give her a round of applause. So congratulations.
I didn't expect that. Thank you.
It was a lot of hard work.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we get started, is there anything that you wanted to say at the top of the meeting, Sandrea?
No, just welcome everybody. Back to you, Sarah.
All right, super. All right, so today we are fortunate to be joined by Isabel Leyva. Isabel, did I pronounce your name correctly? Okay, she's a senior organizer with the New York Civil Liberties Union, which you may know as NYCLU. So that will be an acronym that we'll use, and she's giving us a presentation on the NYPD Strategic Response Group. So some of you may have seen this in the news already, and so we'll get more details and information from Isabel today. So take it away, Isabel.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to start. If someone could just let me share my screen, it's saying I'm not able. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Can everyone see that? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Isabel Leyva. I am a senior organizer at NYCLU, and I work primarily around policing issues in New York City. And specifically related to this, I run our campaign and our protest monitoring program that's related to the Strategic Response Group. That's what I'm here to talk to you all today, and about specifically why this issue matters to your community. We have been going to community boards around Manhattan where this unit is being deployed to give folks some information about this unit and about the campaign that we and more than 60 other organizations have started in the last year and a half to actually disband this unit. So for folks that might not know, I think a lot of the people that I talk to don't even know what the SRG is, which is very reasonable given kind of where they're at. You don't typically run into them in your everyday life. And one of the concerning parts of this whole thing is that that might be changing now. So the SRG, which is what I'll call them from here on out, or the Strategic Response Group, is a militarized unit of the police of the NYPD known for its abuse of protesters and community members. So this unit was founded in 2015, and when the unit was founded, it was established as a unit that would both do counterterrorism and protest policing. And immediately advocates like us, legal organizations, spoke out saying it is inherently problematic for one unit to be doing both of those things, right? Conflating protest and terrorism is a very dangerous path to go down. And since then, the NYPD actually almost immediately said that, never mind, this unit will only be doing counterterrorism. But the unit was deployed to protest only months later after the killing of Freddie Gray. And the unit has really been a staple of protest policing ever since. This unit is widely known for its brutality, racial bias, and misconduct. It has been coined as the Goon Squad by many media outlets. They are pretty notorious for levels of violence that we've seen in protests and out of protests, which we'll talk about in a bit. But they were really central to the violence that we saw at the hands of the police during the 2020 protests here in New York City. So the SRG, the initial budget of this unit was $13 million. That budget ballooned to $90 million within 1 year. And the current estimated budget of the SRG is $133 million per year. There is no transparency around the size, scope, and function or the funding of the SRG. There is, even in comparison to other NYPD units, there is no oversight or accountability. And this unit essentially functions as a rogue entity in our city. So what makes this unit so uniquely dangerous? There are multiple things, and we could really get into the minutia of this. So this is just kind of a broad overview. One of the biggest issues with the SRG is a very clear pattern of racial bias. So as part of the NYCLU, I run what's called the Protest Monitoring Program. So through this program, which was launched in June of 2020, we train New Yorkers to go to protests and document police conduct at those protests. And this is really where the campaign was born from, because we very quickly started seeing this pattern of this specific unit brutalizing protesters, kind of using arbitrary methods of crowd control and doing mass arrests for folks that were engaging in nonviolent protests. And what we saw when we started digging into this unit, that this unit is specifically trained to target racial justice demonstrators. So in the training manual for the SRG's bike squad, the two categories for protest groups are peaceful and violent. The examples that are given for violent crowds are BLM movement, Occupy Wall Street, and anti-Trump demonstrators. So they're plainly in writing. They are trained to see racial justice protesters, protesters for Black lives, as violent crowds, and therefore are trained to use methods against those crowds. And what we saw in our documentation over the last 3 years is that this unit will target protesters for racial justice, even with as few as 15 people, but will allow far-right demonstrators, groups like the Proud Boys, to protest without issue, and will even arrest counter-protesters that are countering those demonstrations. And this goes beyond protests. So of complaints that included race between 2015 and 2020, 91% of complainants were people of color, and more than 60% of those complainants were Black. So there's a real issue with racial bias here. The second piece that I already touched on is the bloated budget. This unit is wildly overfunded and lacks any kind of transparency on its funds or scope or size. On March 1st, City Council held an oversight hearing on the SRG, which is really our main ask for the first leg of our campaign, was to push the council to hold a hearing where we could ask questions of the NYPD and allow our community members to testify about their experiences with this unit. The NYPD actually refused to show up to a hearing about this unit, despite the fact that they were called to testify about the SRG. They cited a gag order related to lawsuits from 2020 protests. That gag order does not exist. And then on March 20th, during a public safety hearing, the NYPD again refused to answer the city council's questions about the SRG specifically. So there is really no transparency or accountability for the harm that this unit has done. And I've mentioned the SRG's violence. The SRG is absolutely an escalating force. We have seen it with our own two eyes. We have been to more than 200 protests since 2020, and the pattern is very clear that the SRG is an escalatory force. And this unit is not just covering large protests. This unit was central to the sweeps of homeless encampments where folks, their belongings were destroyed, but also people were harmed by this unit. This unit escorts a group of local anti-abortion activists once a month when they come to do a procession to the local Bleecker Street Planned Parenthood. This unit shows up when and where the NYPD sees fit, and there's no metric for tracking that. And then finally, the SRG, the actual officers of the SRG, receive an abnormally high number of misconduct complaints compared to their non-SRG counterparts. So the median number of complaints in the NYPD at large is 3. The median number for SRG officers is 6. They also have a higher rate of substantiation, meaning that the CCRB actually found evidence of misconduct at higher rates with SRG officers. So all of this really combines to make this unit a very, very dangerous arm of the NYPD that, in our view, not only has no place at protests, but also has no place in our communities. So with all of this information, we launched our campaign to disband the SRG in January of 2022. We, the NYCLU, lead the campaign with more than 60 organizations signed on. And our demand is of City Council to disband this unit through the budget process by removing the estimated $133 million of funds out of the NYPD's hands and reinvesting those funds into our communities. The SRG is not necessary in any way. There is nothing that the SRG does that the NYPD does not do in other units, except for brutalize folks at protests. So our ask is that not only is the SRG disbanded, but no unit like it exists in our city. I mentioned the March 1st hearing. In March total, between March 1st and March 20th hearings for City Council, more than 200 New Yorkers spoke about the physical, emotional, psychological harm and trauma that this unit has inflicted on them. So why this matters to you all is because in November, the NYPD, along with the mayor, made an announcement that the SRG would now be deployed to 20 precincts across New York City. Predominantly in Black and brown neighborhoods that they consider to be quote unquote high crime areas. There has been no transparency around what this deployment looks like. Our understanding is that these officers are already in neighborhoods. What was said publicly, which again is very kind of top line, is that they would be there to supplement routine enforcement, meaning to support the local cops that are in community. As I mentioned, all of the reasons why the SRG is dangerous makes them incredibly dangerous in our communities and in our neighborhoods. In 2018, I don't know if folks have heard of someone named Sahid Vassell. He struggled with mental illness and was in his community in Crown Heights. The local police officers were familiar with him. SRG officers came on site. They were not familiar with him. And Sahid Vassell was killed when he was holding a pipe that was mistaken for a gun. And his father has been outspoken about this unit. So that's just one example of what happens when these militarized units are deployed into our neighborhoods. And we feel that this unit causes harm everywhere it's deployed. And it's deeply concerning to us that a unit with a history of racial bias is being deployed to predominantly Black and brown communities. But your community board district is included in this group of 20. So that's why we wanted to reach out to you all to make sure you know that this unit is coming to your neighborhood or might already be there, and know that there is ongoing work to actually dismantle this unit altogether. So just so folks know kind of where we're at, we have 23 council members that have signed on to a statement in support of fully disbanding the SRG. This is the list as it stands. And again, this is calling for the funds of the SRG to be removed from the NYPD and instead reinvested into programs and community support that actually keep us safe. So the things that we are asking community boards to do, there are kind of several options. As an individual, if you would like to get updates on the campaign, there's a link there. We're asking folks to reach out to their council member if they're not on that list of sign-ons to urge them to sign on. But as a community board, there are two different options that we've created. We've given this presentation a lot, and we are just now making this ask. And folks are at different places, right? Some people might be really concerned about the SRG being in their community, but might not be fully on board for disbandment. So there are two options here. One is to issue a resolution in support of disbanding the SRG. And then the other is to issue a resolution in support of keeping the SRG out of your neighborhood. So specifically talking about concerns around your community and the SRG being deployed to communities, period. So those are kind of the two ways that we could build this out. And we have materials prepared that I sent over to the chair and folks earlier, but I'm happy to share that with other people if that would be helpful. Those are kind of the two tiers of involvement. And we're currently in conversation with several community boards that are kind of working through which they're going to pick and putting together a resolution. And then finally, you might have seen on the last slide, the SRG is being deployed into your community. These are actually palm cards that we have printed in bulk, and we do a lot of distribution in community. If this is something that any of you would be interested in having available in offices to pass out to your neighbors, we are happy to coordinate and share those with you. If your council member might be interested in having them in their office, they just give an overview of what the SRG is, let folks know that they're coming to their neighborhood, what to keep out for, some know your rights information, and then there's a link to get involved in the campaign. So that's kind of just an overview of everything. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm not sure how that works in this format, but that is all I have for you all today. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, Isabel. Oh, sorry, Sandra.
I was saying thank you. I was trying to clear my throat. Thank you. I guess I'll speak really quick and then you could go to whoever's raising hands. First and foremost, thank you for your presentation. It was to the point, it gave great information. Very interesting to see the city council members that did sign on and who did not sign on. So that's very eye-opening for me. I'm medically retired from New York City Police Department. I used to supervise payroll, so I was a civilian. And I know the good, bad, and the ugly of the agency. So the fact that there's no oversight is problematic. The fact that there's no accountability is also problematic. I was one of the longest organizers up East Side for Black Lives Matter. We were at Cautions Park for 507 days, protesting against, the police brutality in the wake of the killing of George Floyd when we started. Just to know that a unit like this is operating and taxpayers are paying, I'm giving my opinion, and my feelings, just to know that this unit is operating taxpayer funded and how their overtime budget has imploded. I mean, that's alarming. And like I said, I used to supervise payroll. So I understand, I've seen, the waste in this department. And yeah, thank you for what you do. I'm definitely interested in the palm cards. So I will connect with you for some work I do in my community and beyond. I would like a nice stack and, yeah, but thank you for this information. Sarah will continue to lead the meeting and I'll chime in when needed, but this is great information. It pricked my heart. It should prick other people's heart too, just to see that this is happening to certain areas, certain demographics of people, right, that are already oppressed, that are already over-policed, and I know from being in NYPD, there are so many units that they have that can do the same thing. So why do you have a unit to actually operate in this? They get federal funding, they get city and state funding, but but I'll yield and be quiet. Back to you, Sarah. I just had to get that out before people, chime in.
Yes, never be quiet. So I see that Lori has her hand up. Before I call on Lori, I just as a clarifying question that we may not have an answer to is how did NYPD select those 20 communities where they were going to be deploying the SRG?
Yeah, that's really unclear. The statement that was made is that these are high crime precincts and areas, but there are several council members in districts that were named that pushed back on that, saying, actually, if you look at the data, our neighborhood is not any of those things. So there are some real questions about how these areas were selected, and we don't have any clarity because the NYPD has so far refused to speak about this at all.
Thank you. Lori, and then Rita.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I mean, this is truly stunning. I don't even really know what to say other than to ask, I guess, if you think that the fact that the mayor lives right across the street from me, right across the street from me, the mayor who used to be a policeman, lives right across the street from me. And I think that might have something to do with it. I mean, but anyway, it doesn't really matter to me, like why it was decided. I just think that these people this unit has to go. I mean, it's I can't even it's like it's the complete opposite of what, we used to talk about community policing, and how that it would be like that the cops on the beat would know, the people who they were, protecting. And this is like sending in, the Marines. It's like to do something, that's just, I'm kind of stunned. I'm not even really being articulate here, but I want to thank you for like raising this issue. And I guess my question is, what can we do to convince our council people that they should be on board with this? Because I mean, obviously we are not a high crime neighborhood, and there's a very big difference, as we all know, between like perception and reality. And while people might be afraid because they watch the news, the fact of the matter is that crime in our neighborhood, except for like shoplifting, I guess, is down. Like fewer people are being whatever. So do you have any like I don't know what the word is, information to use with our city council people to try and convince them that like, hey, this is ridiculous. This is just like, it's over the top. It's too much money. The money could be so much better spent putting it towards mental health, issues, for instance. How can we approach it? Anyway, thank you. I'll stop talking now.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the biggest things that we've learned through advocating for this is that the council members care a lot about what constituents have to say related to this. Many council members did not know that they were getting the SRG until we reached out and told them that. There was no communication about this. So I think coming to your council member as a constituent, as someone that is involved in the community board, saying, we understand that this is happening. We are deeply alarmed by this. This is what this unit does when they go out onto the street. It has no place in our neighborhood, and asking them to sign on. I can share this with folks after, but we have our statement of support as a Google form that council members can sign on to at all times. We've had a lot of success with drop-in visits. So we've had constituents show up at offices of council members and bring the letter and say, hey, this is really important to your community. Will you sign on? And we've had people sign on because of those efforts. So I would just say, coming at it from the angle of a constituent that's concerned about the safety of their community, real safety, right? Not sending in militarized police, that has been really effective.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Rita, followed by Olivia.
I'd like to, first of all, thank you for this presentation, and thank you for opening our eyes. I would like to propose a resolution that we support the disbanding of the SRG, and as one of the whereases is to encourage our elected officials to sign on to this and to help the community guard against this totalitarian police force. So my proposal is to have a resolution, just as I just said. Will anybody second it?
Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Lori seconds it.
Great. And then can Rita speak to her proposal now? So I have your whereas on asking our elected officials to sign on to the campaign to disband the SRG. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Rita?
That something like this is very dangerous, and we'd like to know, to be aware of whether they are aware of it, and to know why they're only that list that was presented. The whole city council should be up there. It's very disturbing. very disturbing to find out that we have this sort of secret police in our own, government. This is almost like a third world nation thing. So I think a lot of the things get put into the whereas, but somebody has to call for the vote so that we can at least know whether we're going to vote as a committee or what.
Yeah.
I can't.
I think if we could allow the discussion to help us craft more whereases. So the result is to call on a city council to disband the SRG, and then I think after we get feedback to add to the whereases, then we can have someone call the question and then vote. And Rita, if you would accept some additional whereases, I'd like to suggest Lori's point about this being the antithesis of community policing, to cite the city council hearing and the participation of over 200 New Yorkers, and then to touch on what both you and Lori said about how we're concerned that this kind of unit, the militarized counterterrorism unit, is being dedicated to policing First Amendment activities.
Absolutely.
That are protected by the Constitution.
I accept it all.
Super. Include this language. Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Olivia, and then followed by Boaz.
Hi, yes, thank you, Isabel, for your presentation. And hi, for those who don't know me, this is my first time here at a CB8 meeting. I'm Olivia, I live in the community, and I know Sandrea from some BLM marches that happened in 2020. Sandrea, it's good to see you. Yeah, so I found the presentation very informative, and I am aware of the campaign to disband the SRG and obviously in support of such a campaign. I did not know, though, that the SRG was going to be deployed into Yorkville, which is frightening considering that this is a unit that really only exists to brutalize community members, as we've learned today. And I really believe that the money can be much better used to serve our community, going towards housing, education, literally anything else, as a proactive means of driving down crime rather than a reactive force like the SRG that just constantly brutalizes New Yorkers. And I'm glad that Isabel also spoke to the SRG presence at the Planned Parenthood in Soho. I have personally seen the SRG stationed at this Planned Parenthood. They not only protect but escort anti-abortion protesters monthly, and have acted violently consistently towards clinic defenders who are trying to protect patients, trying to access the healthcare that they are legally entitled to. And honestly, I find this embarrassing for a state that calls itself a safe harbor for abortion. The fact that patients trying to access, any kind of care, not just abortion access, but anything that Planned Parenthood offers, have to contend with anti-abortion protesters being protected by a very large police presence. It's scary. And if I were a patient there, I would be frightened out of my mind. So if this community board is prepared to issue a proposal in favor of disbanding the SRG, that would really, I would be very much in support of that. Thank you.
Wow. And maybe we can include the participation of SRGs in escorting protesters when people are trying to access healthcare, and that is a deterrent for the people who are seeking reproductive justice, reproductive care.
Can I just say something? Sorry. And what you're saying is actually correct, and what Olivia pinpointed. It also shows a bias, not just of people, but of what the protests are about, right? So police supposed to be just fighting crime, not working with one side. So that is very problematic that they're policing one side and not the other side, and escorting others in and possibly locking up or pushing back. And, even the kettling, I don't know if people understand and know about kettling. When you brought up my certificate, I did a research paper on kettling and how detrimental it is to people, because they actually lock them in like a square, and then they pluck them out and they arrest them. So if it's past a curfew and they want to leave, they surround them and they can't leave, and then they're able to arrest them. So it's just little things like that is so horrible to people. Because say if you want to go somewhere and you're locked in, but yeah, just the part, like I said, that it's one-sided. They're picking a side that they choose to police and not to police, instead of just protecting everyone, because that's their job, to protect, right, and serve, not just protect and serve a certain group. So I just wanted to put that in. Back to you, Sam.
Thank you, Sandria. That's a really great point about protecting all of us and not showing bias. Boaz, followed by Wendy, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Perfect. So first of all, I listened to the entire session over YouTube. I want to recognize again the co-chairs of this great committee. I always learn new things, and please continue with your amazing job. Now, I learned a lot, great presentation. I agree with the resolution that, let's disband the SRG or whatever they are called, but I'm against defunding the police. Meaning, if this department has, I don't know, a budget of $200 million, let's fund a different department in the police. I liked someone mentioned community police. I don't know what's the department, what's the name of what's the official department over there, but I will give you an example. I would love to see, and I talked with Rita Popper about it offline, I would love to see community policemen standing next to Rupert Park, making sure that everyone are, behaving, whether the dogs, whether the bicycle, everyone living in harmony. And I guess there is no fund for this because there are no police over there. So let's make sure that we include this in the resolution. All the government agency should work for the community. As simple as that, not against the community. Thank you very much. And again, kudos to the co-chairs. Congratulations, amazing job. And please continue to bring interesting people with interesting ideas. And thank you. That's it from my end.
Sorry. Oh,
okay, go ahead.
I was just going to respond to that. I think that's a conversation that we have often when we talk about disbanding the SRG, and the risk of keeping the SRG's funds in the NYPD is that the NYPD has a well-established pattern of recreating units with a different name that do the same thing. We're seeing it right now with these street crimes units that are just reincarnations of past units that were disbanded for abusive practices. So when you go after a unit and just say, this can't exist, but you can keep the money, instead of saying, we're going to remove the money that is being used for this unit and no unit like this can be created, you're leaving room for them to just redesign it. It happens over and over again. And one of the big pieces is that the NYPD is not short on funds, right? The NYPD is far over budget and continues to get more funding. They're taking the SRG's money would not have any impact on the level of policing we have in the city. They are not short on cash. So to us, this is a really important, we can't prevent the SRG from being recreated if we do not remove those funds from the hands of the NYPD. I just wanted to share that with folks. I don't know if everybody knows the ins and outs of how the NYPD creates units, but that's one of the biggest pieces and why we say disband, because if we don't take that money, they will just rename it and it will do the same thing in our communities.
She's absolutely correct. And it's not about defunding the police. So I know that term has, got people in a tizzy, but if you listen to what the presenter said and how they went over budget. So they had a budget and then they went on. We're talking about millions of dollars that came from where? So it's not about defunding. They had a certain amount of a budget and then they are requesting or using more and probably off of overtime and everything like that. And there's a lot of waste in the police department. And a lot of people are not aware of it. And yeah, I'm for it, disbanding this unit and, putting that money somewhere else in a better resources that, housing, the unhoused. There's so many ways, mental health is a list of needs that money can make this city even better. And I was just curious too, because there's public housing in this Community Board 8, which I live in. And I'm wondering, is the policing, would it have been in our area more so, in the 5 buildings that I live at, on our campus, Holmes and Isaacs? And I know it's shoplifting and there's other things that's going on, but it's throughout the city. So, I'm just curious, do you know where they were going to actually be at? And I'm for one suffer, we all suffer. So it's not, I wouldn't advocate it for it to not just be here, disband it, period, across the board, citywide.
Yeah, we don't have any info on we don't even have info on what this unit is doing beyond what the initial report said, which is just that they would be supplementing routine enforcement. So every time that we've asked, council members asked the NYPD these questions and the NYPD refused to answer them. So that's one of the concerning parts, right? We don't know, because they framed it as a high crime situation and that's how they identified these neighborhoods. It would not surprise me if lower income ends of the neighborhoods are the ones where the SRG is being deployed, but we don't know anything further than that right now.
Thank you.
Wendy and Lori, I see your hand, but since you've spoken, I'm going to have Charlie go next, if that's okay.
Hi, thank you so much. I really want to thank I take it so personally, wonderful chairpersons, Ms. Andrea and Ms. Sarah. Thank you very, very much for bringing this wonderful speaker. Isabel, thank you so much for that very concise and passionate presentation. I have very practical questions, a couple of them. One is the budget solely from New York City, or is there actually federal and state funding that we need to address as well? And is there any current tally of our 51 city council members as to where they stand? Is there any chart available online or a link to something of that nature? And if this unit is disbanded, what happens if these particular officers are reabsorbed into local precinct? Does that change the nature of the local precinct working with neighborhood groups and outreach, et cetera? And while I'm piling on my questions, I'm also wondering if we can try to utilize some language that only initiatives that are fully transparent can be funded, and that have very frequent check-ins, because we do know that something else will be recreated. And any time in New York City that you say anti-terrorism, people are thinking of 9/11, and which is probably prevention of that is largely outside of the capacity of a local law enforcement unit. It's more of the province of the FBI and federal agencies. But so to recap, budgeting, where does the money coming from? Reassignment of officers, what happens there? Any special discipline, depending on the egregiousness of the discipline, is there any difference in how they're disciplined than any other officer? reassigning the police, and is there a current tally? And thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to try to go from simplest to most difficult. And if I miss anything, please let me know. First of all, yes, there is. We have a running chart. I can send the link to Will, and then maybe he can share it out with folks, where we have a list of everybody that we've reached out to, where they're at, which committees they sit on, and whether they're signed on to the campaign. So I can share that. In terms of what happens to officers on the SRG once disbandment happens, one of the things that I didn't mention, because there's so much that we can mention when we talk about this unit, part of what makes this unit so harmful is that this unit is voluntary. So these are existing officers that are assigned to other precincts, other units that volunteer to work for the SRG. And there is a ton of overtime involved in the SRG, and our estimate of $133 million does not even include overtime or the equipment that we estimate at $2,000 per officer for their riot gear. So the officers that are in SRG will just be taken out of SRG. In terms of discipline, obviously that's out of our hands, right? The CCRB is the one that handles making recommendations, and then the NYPD has to decide whether they're going to follow the CCRB's recommendation. I highly recommend, if there are public safety hearings in city council scheduled in the next month, which there should be, listening in. There was a very interesting exchange between the NYPD and the CCRB, where they were both testifying, where the NYPD actually talked about the rates at which they just don't follow the CCRB's recommendations for discipline. For folks that don't know, the CCRB is the Civilian Complaint Review Board. They're the folks that get complaints about the NYPD, and they investigate those complaints, and they decide whether they are substantiated or not and make recommendations for discipline. So there's a real problem here, which is a much broader issue around the NYPD actually following directives to discipline officers. But the short answer is that the SRG officers would not stop being cops if we disbanded the SRG. They would resume what they were doing when they're not on SRG, because it's voluntary. And I'll just note one other thing is that reports from inside the department say that this unit attracts officers that are looking for quote unquote more action. So we think that that's part of the reason why this unit is so violent, because these officers are looking, they call them hats and bats. They're looking to hit the streets with hats and bats. And then your other question was around what, the third one? Sorry,
Budget.
I'm forgetting them.
Budget, state and
Budget.
federal.
Budget. As far as we know, it's city funding. And again, no transparency around that. For example, the budget of the SRG from 2019 to 2020 barely increased, but we know that 1,200 SRG officers were added to that unit during the 2020 protests. So there are a lot of questions about how much money this unit is actually spending in practice. And we are just giving our best estimate based on what we know from the very little information that is actually available in the NYPD budget about the SRG.
So if there's to be a resolution, maybe we would consider digging a little deeper as to what an ideal scenario or a more ideal scenario would be in terms of reassignment. I don't know if there's a synergistic effect for officers who are super aggressive, all being together. I'm imagining there are, but I don't have data on that. And how to, what is the effect of assigning them far apart from each other? There's only so many precincts in the city, so you're not going to have everybody kind of totally diluted. Yeah, just some of those other considerations might be rolled into the resolution if you see fit, Chair people. Isabel, thank you for your great answers. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I would just like to add, it's when there's a disbandment, the officers are just literally recycled to something else. Maybe they go back to where they came from, their command. They may go back to whatever unit they were working out of, and they may go into a new unit. So if they're not being disciplined, they're free to be anywhere that, their commanding officer would assign them to, or their borough would assign them to. So one of the problems is the disciplinary actions that are not taken against bad officers that allow them to remain on a job. So that's one of the biggest problems, because if you keep them on the job, they're going to continue their bad behavior. And a unit like that, and probably with no real supervision you know, they can do what they want to do. We've seen something with a Scorpion unit out of state, right? You know, so it happens. It happens, unfortunately. Okay, so sorry.
And Isabel, am I correct in saying that because the state budget hasn't been released yet, that the city budget also hasn't been negotiated yet? And so we still have an opportunity with this resolution to impact New York City's budget.
Yes, absolutely. The budget is due June 30th. And we just had our first round of preliminary budget hearings. So now it will go into the finance committee and there will be a second round of hearings, probably mid-May. And then the public will have another opportunity to testify, and then council will negotiate and then vote on the budget.
Thank you. All right, and Charlie, followed by Lori, followed by Rita.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlie, I'm 17 years old, and I'm actually currently applying to be a member of CB8, and I'd also really like to be a future member of the Social Justice Committee, so I'm very happy that I was able to attend tonight's meeting. And I also live in Yorkville, only 1 block from Carl Schurz Park, and I've witnessed many of the peaceful protests 2 summers ago. And thank you so much, Isabel, for the advocacy work you do in your presentation. It's been really informative and eye-opening. I just wanted to weigh in on this issue because I'm a member of the Youth Advisory Council of the New York City CCRB, or the Civilian Complaint Review Board. So I'm very aware of the problems with over-policing and police misconduct in the city, you know, especially with regard to city youth. So I just kind of wanted to add my voice to say that the young people of the city are especially endangered by militarized policing, you know, not to mention police presence in schools that really criminalizes student misbehavior. So I just, you know, absolutely support the disbanding of this rogue unit. And there are many, you know, better uses even for this sum of money in the city budget, you know, including youth and community services. And I will definitely, you know, raise the issue of this SRG police unit at our next YAC meeting. And I definitely express my support for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Great to meet you. All right, Lori, you've been so patient.
Oh, thank you. Just a quick suggestion for the resolution. I think that we should say something positive about the 19th precinct, just because, I mean, I think going into something where we're saying like, you know, we don't want these, something to the effect of like, you know, that the 19th precinct does an excellent job of like protecting us, you know, that we're glad, we're happy with the work that they do. And, you know, for the most part, it's been, you know what I'm saying? It's like, just to try to introduce it gently, you know, I don't want to come out like guns blazing because, you know, that you don't get anywhere with that. But I mean, just some sort of soft language about how, I mean, I am basically happy with the 19th precinct, you know, but I just don't want this, like, this seems to me to change the entire character of the department, you know, and I do not want that to happen. So I'm not being articulate with the words, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's really good. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I jump in? This is not necessarily about a command. This is about a unit. You know, so we don't know who's been plucked or where the SRG officers came from. So it's not about a command. So I personally don't see that it's needed to mention the 19th in a sense. I mean, it's about the SRG unit. If people have a command that they don't have problems with and they're not over policed and no brutality, then it's evident, right? But if it's not,
Right.
can't really speak to it for people. I mean, I worked out at the 19th, so like I said, I seen the good, bad, and the ugly.
Right.
But just giving them a thumbs up in this resolution, I think to me, it defeats what we're trying to say by mentioning a command. I mean, if they're doing good work, then they should continue to do good work in my mindset. That's just my since wanted.
Yeah,
but-
no, I agree with you, Sandra. I absolutely agree with you. But that was the point that I guess I was trying to make, not very well. But because it's like, why do we need these people? It's like, I feel like they're sending in an invading force. You know what I mean? Like where this community is well protected by the 19th precinct. So why are these, supermen, or whatever they're called, think of a military slow on the uptake here, but why do we need these militarized, super cops jumping into our territory? Like, we don't need them. That's what I'm saying. We don't need them. Anyway, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I was just.
I just want to make sure folks know that SRG has been or is being deployed to the 18th and the 19th, just so folks know specifically which precincts they're being sent to.
And 18, where is 18? Where is the 18th?
I believe 18th is
Midtown North? What's up? Midtown North?
it's Midtown North. Yeah.
Midtown North. Okay.
People don't know it as the 18th. So it's a south and the north, yeah.
Or
I
the
took a
1-8, right? They call it the 1-8. Never mind.
Yeah, Midtown North. Okay.
All right. Anyway, this is not a bone of contention. I was just trying to think about, ways to softly present it. I don't know. Okay, I'll shut up.
Your points are valid. Everybody, this is what we're here for. Thank you, Lori.
I'm copying everything down as folks are suggesting
I-
where at.
I just want to say that we really have to stick to the SRG and not tell the city how to police. I mean, I agree 100% with Lori. We are in a wonderful precinct, so on and so forth. But before I go any further, Charlie, I hope you make it. We need more people like you. But I think that as Isabel is here for the SRG, and we don't care what they do with it. If we just want to disband it, and we certainly never want it in our neighborhood. But that's what I think, that we have to not tell the city what to do with their money, or anything else. This is against the SRG, and I think we have to be very focused on that. That's just my opinion, having made the motion. Someone call the question?
Let me, before someone calls the question, let me make sure that everyone is okay with the whereases that I've been jotting down. And so maybe this is a way, so starting with, we have been alarmed by the conduct and practice of the NYPD's SRG unit. It is wholly different from maybe we can say this is a way to blend Lori's point to get a little bit. It is wholly different from our experience and antithetical to community policing. And then we cite the city council hearing on participation of over 200 New Yorkers, disturbing that a militarized counterterrorism unit is dedicated to policing First Amendment activities, which are protected by the Constitution. We're concerned that SRG has been escorting anti-abortion protesters, creating large police presence that can deter people who are seeking reproductive health care. A point on that police should be protecting all of us and not demonstrating bias in who they protect and who they are, and what organizations or groups of people their units are organized against, that government agencies need to be fully transparent to the people they serve. It's concerning that the SRG is not responding to democratic oversight, and that should the SRG be disbanded, we want to make sure that officers do not evade accountability for their actions as members of a unit. So this is trying to get to Wendy's suggestion, and then be it therefore resolved that we want to ask our elected officials to support the disbandment. No. So we should resolve to disband the SRG, and be it therefore resolved that we ask our elected officials to support the disbandment as well. Does that sound good? I see a raised hand. Will, would you mind unmuting Rita first, since this is her resolution?
Could you read the part again with people who are, going to, for health reasons? I think that it could be health reason today, it could be education tomorrow, it could be banned books, on next Wednesday. For any peaceful demonstration does not need the SRG. That they seem to incite cataclysmic results wherever they go, that they are detrimental. They are detrimental to our life. They are bringing a degree of violence to our community, and we don't need it. Just something like that.
Yeah. So in Isabel's presentation, she mentioned that their definition of violent, that they've attached groups to their definitions of peaceful and violent.
Right.
And so I think that using that terminology may kind of
yes,
may allow them to continue to do what they're doing.
Yes, I agree.
But I maybe what we could say is that some language to the effect of, oh good, Isabel's unmuted, so maybe you can help suggest language here.
Yeah, I would say I agree, staying away from violent, non-violent language, because the only people that get to decide whether a protest is violent or not is the NYPD, right? And that's kind of how they're already justifying the way that they deploy this unit. So I would stick to language around the SRG has proven itself to be like at best an escalating force, and at worst an arbiter of violence. And causes harm wherever they go. Therefore, they have no place in our community or at protests. So I would stick to like broad, they create harm and should not be anywhere, let alone at First Amendment protected activities.
Perfect.
All righty, Wendy, thank you for being patient.
Hi, thanks for letting me step in again. I was thinking that I would really prefer to call all abortion rights women's health. I think we need to absorb control of what's actually going on here. It's not just one issue for women's health. There are many other issues. Currently, we're focusing on reproductive health, but anything else could happen as well. And the actions, so it seems to me it's free speech. women's health, racial justice, I think really needs to be highlighted tremendously, because this is the not so quiet killer throughout the city. And I certainly, want all the other issues to be prominent as well, but to not highlight that to me is painful. I was thinking something like, whereas the SRG has overstepped their peacekeeping mandate with their actions causing actual harm and violence to communities they should be serving, with SRG actions related but not limited to free speech, women's health, and racial justice, we call upon the city council to immediately disband and defund, etc. You have all the rest of the language, but just a thought. And we have 77 precincts throughout the city. It's likely that these officers are going to be reabsorbed, to Lori's point, into precincts that are functional. Maybe it's not inappropriate to say that these officers need to be retrained to related to the community peacekeeping mandate, consistent with best practices of policing. Somebody else can make better language than me, but maybe that's a way to address Lori's issue of to make a distinction between the SRG and precincts without saying every precinct gets a pass. That's not right either. But would actually tip our hat to the fact that there's a peacekeeping mandate, and these guys need to be, because they're not going to be gotten rid of, not all of them anyway. They need to be retrained. It's kind of a slap on the wrist and saying, like, you didn't do right, and now you can't do your job that way because that's wrong. And especially the transparency thing, I think, needs really as well to be banged on. And Isabel, to your point about we can't really talk about violence, I totally get that they think that they are the total judges of violence, but as somebody who used to work in the court system, no, really, they're going to be judges. And ultimately, if voters are well enough organized, then it's really up to the people who live here. So I'm hoping that our proposal will, and your amazing work will, inspire people to be more involved. All right, that's it. I'm muting myself.
I like everything that Wendy mentioned. I just think with disbanding and using the terminology defunding is gonna give us a hard way to go trying to pass this on our full board. So reallocating the funding is better, although I'm for the funding, but in my own, when I'm out protesting and whatever I'm doing. I don't know if that term needs to be, because once it's disbanded, it's gone, right? But where is the money going, right?
Yeah.
All of this. So that,
the terminology that we use, in case it's helpful, is we use divest, invest. So we are divesting from militarized policing in our communities, and we are investing in programs and systems that actually keep us safe. So we don't use defund, we use divest, which has been really helpful when we have these conversations.
Okay, same as like reallocating. That's fine. Yeah. We on the same. Yeah, because I just know that term has gotten people.
Yeah.
There's in such a bunch, but when you're funding police force that's harming people, it is really not good for, and it's taxpayers' money, right?
Yeah.
So.
I think one thing that's been useful is when we talk about our budget is a reflection of what we care about, right? We should care about keeping each other safe in real ways. We should care about giving each other services that we can actually rely on. So what are we prioritizing? So if you're talking about like budget justice or what our communities need, this is a lot of money that could go to actually supporting the people that live in our communities.
Yeah. Education, mental health, a lot of things, right? Youth services.
Yeah.
So I really like that language about how our budget should represent our values and who we care about. Sandria, are you suggesting a resolve that instead of saying disband the SRG, that we say maybe something like resolve that we divest from the SRG and any form of militarized policing in our communities, and reinvesting in reinvesting in supportive supportive care, or some other terminology, like the services that promote that promote public safety.
No, we leaving disbanding in. Yeah, we want to disband it. It's just the reallocating. She said that disinvest. So same language. You know, disband and keep that in there, please. That's the purpose of this. We want to, you know, be supportive in disbanding this unit. And hopefully, you know, as they're making their tours, more community boards will get on board as well.
Okay. So then how about resolved, disband the SRG? Further resolved that we should be divesting from any form of militarized policing and reinvesting in programs that support community public safety. And then the last resolved, encouraging our elected officials to support the disbandment of SRG.
Well, when you say community public safety, should it be, I thought we was talking about community values. It's because when it's public safety is going back into the police department anyway. When you mention
Right.
public, I'm right back to them. So community, you know, values, you know, something like that. I don't know whoever want to chime in, but
Yeah. Because to me, public safety is like housing security, food security, and all those things. But you're right that if we say public safety, it'll get interpreted the wrong way.
it'll fall into, you know.
See Olivia and then Lori.
Yeah, I was just going to make the same suggestion that Sandrea just spoke to about like making sure that it's clear that the funding that was originally set aside for the SRG goes outside, like doesn't get reabsorbed into possibly regenerating some kind of new SRG adjacent unit. And the other thing that like came up as others were speaking was I don't feel like it's necessary to, I don't know if something like using the term abortion was like in the resolution as you typed it. I don't feel it's necessary to change that to something more general like women's health. I mean, just speaking on Planned Parenthood, it doesn't merely service women, and cisgender women are not the only people who need abortions. And I think it's also important to note that a lot of queer people rely on Planned Parenthood services, especially with STD testing, and they are also disproportionately affected by the kind of violence that the SRG doles out, not also intersecting with Black and Brown identities. So I just wanted to speak to that as well. I'm not saying that we also need to include that in the resolution, but yeah, just wanted to voice that.
No, I agree. And having a more inclusive way to describe the people who are being served by all of these health centers. And oh, Lori.
Okay, I promise this is the last time I'm going to say anything. I'm just a suggestion with language. If you're talking about, actually, I'm not clear about how this is how we're going to express this, but I think the words proven programs that promote safety, you know, like putting the word in where the money should go, like the money should go to prove, you know, or demonstrate, you know, programs that have demonstrated, you know, that they promote safety, something like that. Do you think that would be helpful?
You know, I was just thinking about programs that strengthen communities.
Equity,
That's good.
equity, you
Strengthen
know.
communities. Yeah, I like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it.
Because once you have that, you have everything, right? If you don't, if people are doing well in their lives, and they have the resources, they don't have to do bad things if that's what's really happening. But we're talking about protests and stuff like that, so that's about killings and bad behavior. So that has nothing to do with poverty. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. Will?
I don't know if you've fleshed out all of the whereases for sort of as you described this unit, but I do think that we should call out the fact that they have not been that the NYPD has refused to answer questions to the city council. And I would even go so far as to call that completely unacceptable, or some sort of version of, reprimanding type language, because a lack of accountability to the city council is very concerning.
Go Will. Gotta give you a shout out. Go Will.
I'm clearly an old council person, so like when the council is being like denied the ability to hold a hearing, it's just that's not a city. That's when one branch can't hold the other branch accountable.
Just for context, in case it's useful for that, we've been pushing for a city council hearing for a year before we got one. And the hearing was actually postponed twice because the NYPD said that they couldn't make it. So it was, we had 100 people registered to testify each time. They continued to postpone it. And then they created a new date on March 1st for the NYPD to be there. And then the NYPD did not show up without telling anybody that they would not be showing up. So it wasn't just that they did not attend once. It was a very prolonged process of them avoiding any kind of accountability around this unit.
110%. Yes. I was aware, but you're probably informing other people.
Okay. So, let's go through the whereases quickly, and then perhaps a motion, someone calling the question. This will be, all this language will be made prettier. But I just wanted to make sure that we have the topics that we hope to, that we wanted to make sure that we got into the whereases and confirm everything about the resolution. So we've been alarmed by the conduct and practice of the NYPD's SRG unit. It's wholly different from our experience with and the antithesis of community policing. There was recently a city council hearing and participation of over 200 New Yorkers, and NYPD did not show up. It's disturbing that a militarized counterterrorism unit is dedicated to policing First Amendment activities, which are protected by the Constitution. The SRG has proven itself to be an escalating force that causes harm, and that has no place in any of our communities, nor at protests. We want police to protect us and not be selective about who they offer protection to. Government agencies need to be fully transparent to the people they serve, and it's concerning that the SRG is not responding to democratic oversight. It is unacceptable for NYPD to not participate in city council hearings and not respond to basic questions of accountability. Wendy had lovely language about overstepping peacekeeping responsibilities, and that the SRG has, and this is combining Wendy and Olivia's points, that their conduct has been a threat to free speech, racial justice, women's health, and reproductive health. And whereas SRG has overstepped, oh no, that was Wendy's language. And upon disbandment, we do not want former SRG members to evade accountability for their actions, and they need to be retrained before they're reintegrated into their precincts. And then whereas our budget should represent our values and how we care about each other as New Yorkers. So the first resolved is disband SRG, very simple. The second resolved is divest from any form of militarized policing and invest in programs that strengthen communities and support equity. Number 3, encourage our elected officials to support the disbandment of SRG. And I see heads nodding. And so I think since you made the motion, Rita, we need someone else to call the question.
I can't call the question.
Lori's
Lori is waving her.
I will call the question.
Thank you, Lori.
I'll second. Okay. Taking this all down. All right. And so so for those of you who are new to our community board meetings, the community board members and public members are able to vote on resolutions that come out of the committee and go to the full board. At the full board, Sandra and I will make a presentation on behalf of the committee on this resolution. And then there will be a discussion at the full board, at which time more amendments can be made and or not. And then the resolution becomes the statement of the community board after that process. And so, oh, sorry.
I said if it passes at the full board, hopefully it'll pass.
Yes, so that's something that we're thinking about as we're crafting these resolutions. Alrighty, so so question's been called, it's been seconded. Motion to approve.
So yeah, the motion is to approve. So if you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause on this resolution, please indicate that by raising your hand. Otherwise, you'll be marked down as a yes vote. Then I'll read the list of members who are here after I've given it long enough to see if anybody is voting no or abstaining or not voting for cause. So we have Lori Boris, Rita Popper, Sarah Chu, Sandra Coleman, and Wendy McCaver. And that's unanimous, yes.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
So do we have, we can move on with our agenda. Thank you so much, Isabel. And so appreciate your time. And
yes,
look out for our resolution coming out of the full board. Hopefully it'll be intact.
Thank you so much.
Better.
And
Thank you.
Please, those voted and or participated in this, show up to the full board and speak during the public session in support of this resolution. It's very helpful to hear the community speaking. You have 2 minutes to speak, and you're welcome to come back as well. Great presenter, and just speak to in support of it. So we need that as well. So
thank you so much. Please do reach out if you need any more materials or data from us. I'm happy to share anything that might be helpful.
Isabel, before you run away, have other community boards passed resolutions?
No, we are in this stage across the board. So we
Okay.
have a bunch of meetings just like this scheduled for the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
all right.
Thank you.
Sounds like we're the genesis of it, maybe, right? The beginning.
We're not afraid to go first.
Right.
Charlie and Olivia, as first-time attendees, that your voices would be incredibly valued at the public session, and you should know also that the elected officials have representatives there, and so so that's another reason why our public sessions are so important, because it's not just speaking to the community board and sharing your ideas with us, it's also communicating directly to the elected officials, whom we hope will also support the resolution coming from this board.
And that will be May 7th, right? That third Wednesday, May 17th. So we hope you all can show up and give a little talk, 2 minutes or less, just supporting this resolution.
All right.
Back to you.
Any old business? Any new business? Seeing none, Sandra, I will throw it to you for the last word before we adjourn.
Well, thank you, everybody, for showing up and helping us craft this resolution, giving your input. We thank you to our presenter with great data. Data is science in a sense. It gives us what we need to work with. Don't forget to show up at the full board meeting to support this resolution that was passed tonight. And that's it, a motion to adjourn.
Rita, is that a motion to adjourn?
Rita and Lori. Lori seconded.
Okay, super. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Good night. Thanks,
Thank
Will.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Will.